Our next is Sadie Penzato, author, columnist, producer, director, composer, and singer of her own songs. She has written Growing Up Sicilian and Female, a successful memoir based on her youth in the 1930s. I'd like to welcome Sadie Penzato.
Thank you very much. I self-published this book 11 years ago. It's still selling full price, it's still in print, and you'll never see it on the dollar table. I wrote it because, what's his name, wrote Blood of My Blood. Who is he? Yes. And I read that and I said, well, that's not how it was. And it's because he was brought up Sicilian and male, and I was brought up Sicilian and female, and there's quite a difference. I'm working on book 2, and I've got 10 chapters, and that book is titled Blame It on Growing Up Sicilian and Female, for better or worse, because anything good I've done with my life comes from the discipline and hard work I learned growing up Sicilian and female. And anything stupid and foolish, which I've done in my life, is because I was brought up to be obedient, follow tradition, and never question. It took me like 21 years to learn they freed the slaves. Okay. I'm going to read you very short excerpts from my book, which will sort of introduce some of the songs I'm going to sing, because I wrote a Sicilian folk opera that has 33 songs, and the songs promote the plot. Papa slouched comfortably in his chair, puffing on a De Nobili cigar, looked at her suspiciously through squinting eyes. "Si, che vuoi? What do you want?" She took a deep breath and swallowed nervously. It took much courage to ask for permission to go to a dance. Doing so indicated she had talked to a boy, and for this alone she could be punished. Further, she could incur a beating for merely asking to go to a dance accompanied by a boy. This despite the fact she was in her mid-teens. She stared directly at him. Their eyes were almost level with each other. He, being seated, had to look up. The words came pouring out in Sicilian. She wanted to be sure he understood. She'd rehearsed what she was to say, and it came out in a rush. "Papa, in school they have a big dance every year. It's a very special dance, and all the teachers, the principal, parents even. And some of them are there, and everybody wears pretty clothes, and the girls wear long dresses and corsages, and there's music, and it's decorated. Oh, Papa, can I go?" Heart beating, she paused to take a breath. Swallowing hard, she took another deep breath and continued. "Louis Shafford asked me to go. You know Mr. Shafford, Lou's father, remember? The short man with red hair and a mustache. He came and bought apples and grapes last fall, and you talked to him a long time, remember? Oh, Papa, please. I'll work extra hard and do anything he asks me, but please, Papa, can I go?" Papa's large brown eyes, no longer merely squinting, now almost looked like slits. Peering at his elder daughter standing there, he could see she was trembling. Smiling a tiny smile, he thought of how very much like himself she was, tough and quick to anger, seemingly afraid of no one. She accepted discipline or direction only from him. Although it sometimes bothered him to be so, he learned he had to be very hard on her because she was so strong-willed. She had to learn discipline, and only harsh measures would contain her. Although suffering numerous beatings, never would she yield or be compliant if her principles were challenged. In many ways, she was stronger than her brothers, and just the opposite of her baby sister, me, who was totally obedient. Yes, his Caroline was strong-willful, but she was a good daughter and a hard worker. He paused, relishing this moment of power. Staring directly into her eyes, his no longer narrowed. Now they were wide open and questioning. Knowing she was nervously waiting for his answer and that her happiness or disappointment lay solely in his hands, with no show of emotion, he said, "Lui non zaccio sto picciotto mancare so pace, giusto perché io cattato la frutta mia. Io l'ho fare ir allo ballo con te?" I do not know this boy or even his father. Just because he comes and buy fruits for me, gonna let you go to a dance with his son? Ma, che sei pazza? Hey, what are you, crazy? Per quanto tempo l'ha conosciuto? Ido aveva un carro? Dimmi che aveva cacciato il carro. Ido o suo papà? Does he have a car? Who is he? Do I know him? And who's going to drive the car? Answering strongly in Sicilian, Caroline said, Ido è della classe mia, è un picciotto quieto. Perché sono spiata mia? Perché Ido non aveva altra amica. Non sa chi aveva cacciato il carro, ma Ido aveva uno. He's in my class, Papa, and he's a nice, quiet boy with friends. He doesn't have a girlfriend, so he asked me since I don't have a boyfriend, and I don't know who'll drive, but he does have a car. Papa gazed down into his wine glass. It was almost empty. He motioned to her, and she quickly reached over and refilled it. He picked up the full glass, took a long sip, and put the glass down. His deep brown eyes suddenly looked black to Caroline, and she could never before remember seeing them so dark and piercing. For a moment, she did not know whether he was going to jump up from the chair and slap her for daring to make such a request, or if he would simply nod and smile and say yes. Now that is a precursor to one of the songs I'll be singing later. I'm going to sing another part. We had borders in the summertime and Bowery bums in the fall to pick the apples. And I was first generation Italian, and we didn't have newspapers in the house. I mean, talk about illiterate. I mean, I'm the daughter of 2 illiterate Sicilians, and I have 5 degrees, including a doctorate from Columbia. So much. Thank you so much for education, and I mention that. I don't mention it very often, but I mentioned it because this is an educational thing we're at tonight with teachers. This is the end of a chapter. Those men who stopped by our farm for food or work, and those men from the Bowery, all shared in shaping our view of the world. Everything does, I guess. I remember reading somewhere, we are the sum total of all we experience. Looking back, it is clear that besides the hobos and bums, the teachers, those damn Yankees who cursed us and called us all kinds of terrible names, the boarders, the hunters, and much of the other hired help that came into our lives, all of them, in one way or another, enriched, changed, and increased our understanding of being American. They added to our appreciation not only of ourselves, but of the human condition. Remembering the pain and prejudice we had experienced as outsiders, we learned to treat others as decently as possible, regardless of color, age, or position in life. Those early years on the farm were a rich texture of experience that were woven into a cloth of life, one that covered us, shielded us, and comforted us for many years to come. How much time do I have? Now, my father comes out as a monster in this book. I have a Jewish friend who said, I don't care what your sister has done, your father was a bastard. Because we all turned out fine, despite the fact that he was a bastard. Anyway, so I had to write something nice about my father, so I wrote a whole chapter about him. As a matter of fact, I wrote this book because I hated my father. I despised the man, and I wanted the world to know how horrible he was. And as I wrote the book, I found out that perception is not reality. And I found out a lot of things about him that I hadn't understood before. So here we are. Then there's a whole chapter about him, but I got to read you this part. Another aside is an amusing story about Papa that I must insert somewhere, and this is a good place. Shortly after his arrival in America, seeking work, he was sent to Chicago to help build the railroad. He arrived in America with $10 sewn into his coat pocket. He was 18 years old, 1900. By the way, if he was still alive, he'd be 118 years old, and I would be a virgin and unmarried. And he'd roll over in his grave if he's watching me. Anyway, while there, he was assigned to labor with a group of husky, blue-eyed, blonde young men. Papa decided during lunch would be a good time to learn to speak English. Every day, we'd hold up an item or two and give his word for it in Italian. They would laugh and give him their word. And before long, my father could carry on a valid, if halting, conversation with the group. Soon he was proficient in this speech, and upon his return to Manhattan, he decided to go out and try out some English on some friends who spoke the language. Imagine his chagrin when he discovered he had learned to speak Polish rather well. Now, I'm going to sing a few. I wrote an adaptation of this. This book has so many stories in it, but I took one little part and wrote about my sister, and wrote a Sicilian, now I call it a Sicilian folk opera, because it has 33 songs. It started out with 28 songs. It's been produced 5 times. The last time was on the Upper West Side. I don't like what they did to it, so I'm going to be doing it again this spring in various places in the tri-state area on weekends, probably off Broadway for 2 weekends. So here's some of the songs. First, I'll sing the one after Caroline asked Papa if she can go to the prom. So first, this is what she sings. I'm only going to sing 2 lines from each song, so I don't take too much time. Papa, Papa, can you hear me? Can you hear this voice so sad? Papa, Papa, will you listen? Will you listen, not get mad? And Papa replies, Figlia mia, why you asking me such a thing? Figlia mia, I see you and my heart sing. You my joy, you my sunshine, you my glass of wine. And then he goes on to sing why he can't, how he feels about her and what'll happen if she goes to this dance. Well, lots of stuff happens after that, and Papa turns out to be a monster. And so Caroline is brokenhearted, and Mama comes out and sings this. And when she sings this, you hear women in the audience sobbing. Not just, but sobbing. But I'm only going to sing a few lines. Carolina, figlia bella, how my heart she break for you. I know that you feel so bad now, and your heart she break in two. You must learn that we all suffer, there be pain when things go wrong. You must learn that we all suffer, but somehow you must be strong. You be young and you can leave here and be free, or so it seem. Me, your mama, I be old now. I be old and losing my dreams. I'm not going to sing any more of that one. Now, these Bowery bums came, I'm sorry, that's what we called them, Bowery bums. There were no homeless then, they were bums and hobos. And the book has a nice bit about that. Anyway, they came to our farm. This was in the 30s, the late 30s, and people weren't eating Italian food. There was no pizza parlors. We were called greasy guineas because we used olive oil. We were called spaghetti benders because we ate pasta. And so these guys, I've got some dialogue now, and they sing, pasta, 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 fixed a million different ways. Pasta, we get pasta every night since Labor Day. And then there's about 5 or 6, and then sausage and linguine, tubatini, ziti too, meatballs and spaghetti. Wish I had some Irish stew. And then a new song, because it started out with 28 songs, and then 25, then 28, then 30. Well, it ended up with 33 songs. This is the one I wrote for the second or third one. Mama and Papa are standing back to back after something, and she sings, all of my life I try to be good, to work so hard and chop the wood. What I got, you tell me what. And Papa sings, all of my life I work and save, work so hard. Where is it? I wrote this down. And what do I got? No, got a yacht. Then they sing a few more of that, ba-da-da-da, and then she sings, life, she be so hard. And he says, you go clean the yard. She said, where be the joy? And he says, first, bambino boy. And then she comes out and she says, I want to be more than just me. Why can't I be more than just me? Papa comes up, pushes her aside, and says, no one can be other than me. That's it. Thank you.
We have just a few more. I'd like to thank you, Sadie. That was lovely. That was beautiful. Adolfo Queso is a man of many, many accomplishments, which include an MA degree from Harvard University. He is an Army Reserve career officer with the rank of colonel, I believe, an educator who established the Department of Italian at the University of Massachusetts, and the owner of a publishing house, Dante University Press, and author of many books.
So I've lived my life really in America, but I do write in two languages, in English and in Italian. My latest book is called Water and Life, and it does represent a collection of this poetry, which really reflects what we have seen today. I'd like to start by reading one poem called Qui tollis peccata mundi. Please don't be afraid, it's not going to be about the Bible, but it has to do something with the Bible, because from it I learned many things, even though I'm critical, one of which is that happiness can be achieved in certain ways. And I think that you will probably get it in the last word of this poem. Qui tollis peccata mundi. The car radio, emitting voices in chorus of a high mass, beneath towering oaks and maples, whose leaves in full colors drop aimlessly onto a moist ground of soft, expansive beds of red and golden hues amidst water drops flickering from beams of light in a multitude of trajectories through leaves and branches, dancing above the shimmering beds of leaves, and qui tollis peccata through prisms, each a spear for a different torment. The stimulus of lust awakened to arrows that drive deeper into the live flesh in hunger. And you are not here to assuage the pain. I am like the starfish hovering beds of numberless shells, awaiting a current to put them in tide, while all around life throbs indifferent to its hunger. When I find you, will I kiss your lips and be myself again, or those of Dulcinea, and run the plains in search of what will not be there, and fight the dragons in my mind? This is about Mr. Castano, Giovanni Castano, a painter of really quite renown. I spent many, many months with him before he died, and he is the one who really inspired me to this poem called Why Dream? Why dream, he said, that haggard man of wisdom? Live not with your dreams. Unfulfilled passions are rivers lost in vapors. Go, dig. The things you do are those which make you. Don't live as a part of someone bigger than you. Create or destroy, envy is born with age, the stage that you will reach without the breach of cause and effect. Why worry? Life is very bold, we are told, by sages reaching their end. They spend their days in thoughts. Run, fulfill those urges that surge within your soul. Kiss. If you don't do it now, you will miss the bliss that attracts the young. And if you can, follow the cycles as winter follows autumn. The break is never present to prevent the fulfillment you desire. We shall all taste the ocean, deep with grief and wide with hope. No one can cope with the ocean, the God of rivers which bend as do our lives. We meander to hold back time, the prime offender of our lives. I have two poems, one about my father and one about my mother. The one about my mother I will read later on in Italian, and this one is about my father. Most of you have spoken about him. Alone he sits on the solitary hillside, silently looking at the ground. The hands on the shiny cane, the hat on the heap of dirt, his eyes piercing and aflame, the mind thinking about eternity in a world eternally around. I am of you and not you of me, he said, silently to himself as he sat on the solitary hillside, powerless of what was coming and satisfied to rest his hat on the heap of dirt. God had not shown his face. How many lifetimes had passed, and he not shown his face? The old man pondered. How many more will pass before a single glance, a clue, or whatever? On the solitary hillside, the old man sits alone in a world eternally around. And he, powerless, solitary, poised, looks at the sun brilliantly setting over the other hill. How many times before? How many more will have to uncover his head and place his hat on the heap of dirt, even if tomorrow eternally should come? Some of us today come from the 60s and 70s, and we already know of one who, of course, protested the war. And this, as a colonel in the United States Army, I wrote this actually when I was on active duty. And it has to do with the demonstrations of the 60s and 70s. The title of it is A Hippie's Protest. From a life rich of every want, never felt the panger of hunger, or the feet touched the ground other than the cool grass on lawns made beautiful by some Puerto Rican working for some Italian, or on walls-to-wall carpets shampooed as necessary to keep the shag from knotting beneath the feet. The color television screening images of peroxide blondes on martinis, the gratuitous killing, words of lasting peace amidst reports of battle slaughters, the Watergate, from the small to the big unnecessity perpetrated by preacher politicians scoring the recipients of welfare checks, the crying babies with their emaciated faces, farmers clad in Genovese cloth, patched wherever their skins and bones have worked through to the harsh bruises of labor, and the affluent youth protesting it all, a rebel through lengthened hair, barefoot on warm days, the wheels of a supercharged Beetle, 16 speed bikes, the girl wearing tailored jeans shed at the feet, discolored as though sweat had perspired through, patched with embroidered monograms wearing America's flag, the stars on one, the stripes on the other cheek, and the mast wiggling its way up her ass, wishing it were real. I think you can see the message. Two poems in Italian, and you know, they're quite different. Ti ricordo, Napoli bella mia, quando fanciullo ti lasciai, pieno d'entusiasmo e commozione, accompagnato d'un'armonia di confusione. Ti ricordai, Napoli bella mia, quando viaggiai per altre terre, ovunque trovando un ordine, è tutto entro quest'ordine. E tu non c'eri. Non c'era quel fiore che incita l'occhio all'abbraccio irresistibile. Napoli bella mia, di te è tutto bello e affascinante. Tutto vive, tutto è vita, anche nella zona del silenzio dove i motori si sentono a tutta rabbia e le trombe rimbombano di prepotenza. Levate per la nanza, già passa io. Sei tutta vita, Napoli bella mia. che si specchia negli occhi dei tuoi figli eredi esaltanti, son che Napoli, Napoli bella mia. This one is about my mother, and it's every time that I read it, it almost makes me cry, because the relationship between a son and a mother, or between a daughter and a mother, the mother is still the essence in our lives. Quando sarai morta, piangerò solo. Nei sogni ti vedrò, svegliandomi per il trauma della tua immagine mancata. I giorni, in pensieri ti avrò, rattristandomi per il dolore della tua perduta presenza. Piangerò chissà quanto, già le lacrime mi vengono pensando a quel che deve essere. Mi sarai presente ogni ora della mia vita, ricordandomi il miracolo della nascita, le carezze ancor qui segnate, il tuo latte, la premurosità, il tuo bacio di vecchierella al figlio cresciuto bene, orgogliosa di Dio per la maturazione compiuta della vostra vita. Piangerò, come posso non farlo?